welcome to a new Manu's podcast. This is just a kind of random podcast, and I talk about all sorts of things. And I sort of come up with the topic on the spot, or maybe I think about it, and I just throw ideas, and then you come up with your own conclusions. And nowadays, or today, what I want to talk about is what is happening. There's been this year in 2024, there's been so many problems with such big companies, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why they're doing such trivial mistake, and why they're fucking all of us up? And we kind of feel like, okay, what can we do about it? We cannot really do much. I'm just one person, and these are such big companies, and yet things are kind of changing. So the video is gonna be about big companies fuck ups of 2024, and we are just in the middle, in August. There's still more to come. I'm gonna talk about Google, Intel, CrowdStrike, and also Boeing. And let's start with Intel. So this is a tech company, you probably know it, and you probably have or had in the past a laptop from Intel. What happened? They basically started releasing new chips which supposedly they were faster, but they don't work. And the thing is, these things, they just stop working after a few months of use. At the beginning, where companies and their own partners were starting to complain about them, they were like, nah, that's not us, that's you, that you're doing it wrong. Let's see if this is a beautiful article. Yeah, playing the BIOS game. They were basically saying that the companies were using the chips with the wrong settings, and so that was their fault. And then more and more people came out. They were like, we are trying our best to follow the settings that you're indicating, but nothing works. And so at some point they came out with the idea, okay, you're selling defective CPUs, and these has unrolled in the past 6 months. And apparently, they had to say, we have problems in our chips, we had to do some fixes. Apparently the fixes luckily was at a microcode level. They can send some code that makes the use of the CPUs better. It makes it to not crash after a while. But that's their fuck ups. What's also interesting is that, so some people were like, okay, so you're admitting that it's the CPUs that you provided had the wrong code, and so they started crashing by themselves. So that's your fault. Can we get our money back? Can we get our new CPUs back at the very least? And Intel was like, nah, I'm not gonna give you money back or replacements. And that created such a huge problem. I think the last week somehow understood that what they've done and what have happened in the past months has destroyed their branding, and they're gonna sell way less chips than they thought. And so now they're firing a bunch of people, which is amazing. Great from Intel. So that's company number one. Let's go with CrowdStrike. So what happened with these guys? Well, actually no one knew about them till they made the worst crazy thing ever. They basically made more than 8 billion devices unusable. How? Well, apparently CrowdStrike is a company that provides security software for many other companies, but mostly on Windows. And so at some point, one of the developers uploaded the wrong file or the file in the wrong way. But this basically faulty file then reached in one go 8 billion devices, and it made the device or the Windows on the device crash immediately. So there was no possibility of logging in. How is this possible? Well, apparently CrowdStrike sells software that can be run at a very low level in the operating system, Windows operating system stack, almost kernel level. If there is a problem in the kernel level, nothing gets loaded after that. Well, there is not much you can do. You cannot even log in because the operating system is not even being loaded fully. From one day to another, and that was amazing to see. Everything went down, and it was so funny that they came out and said, well, don't worry, this is not a hacker. This was done by our guy. that will work for us. Yeah, it's definitely not the guy's fault. The craziness is that you know, the possibility of uploading the wrong file in so many devices in one go. Someone should have checked before, or there was definitely, they should have checked on some few devices first, at the to the very least, and then upload to the rest of the world, or at least upload to a, you know, gradually, not to all of them in one shot. And the problem is that when you were to upload the thing, the device couldn't ever connect to the internet anymore, so you couldn't update again. So amazing. And that was 8 million of devices, a lot of people, even hospitals couldn't work, people couldn't travel. That was a mess. So another company that somehow fucked up for so many people. It was a funny day for me to observe, but for many others was a pain. Then Boeing. As of today, Boeing CEO, the previous one, left, the one that not enabled but was in the company while all of this was happening. That CEO has left, and now there is another one. But my god, Boeing disaster. It's like, it's insane. And apparently there have been so many failures, crashes, people even died. Why? Because the company decided to release planes in a way that would cut costs for everyone involved. They took a version of one of their aircrafts, which was Boeing 737, and since the new versions were taking time coming out, they were like, okay, let's just use the old version, old model, and let's make it bigger. The problem is that making it bigger meant to, well, not really bigger, but bigger stuff, bigger engines and everything. But the problem was that since they had bigger engines, they had to change this, they had to change that. They just had to do all these fixes, patches on a variation or a model that was not supposed to be in that way anyway. They decided to create all these software that was supposedly was there to avoid to change too much the aircraft. They wouldn't have to rethink or pay for new designs or change it too much. They were like, okay, this is the model, let's write some software that is gonna just manage the sensors of the aircraft better, so that it can manage the fact that the model by itself is not what the design is supposed to be in the first place. I don't know if I explained it well, but basically they took a model, they changed it some ways, and then they're like, okay, this is not gonna work, and then we're like, okay, let's just do some software and let's read some sensor and let's just make it work as we want it to work. But also we want this software to be automatic. You know why? Because if we have to make a pilot be knowledgeable about it, we have to, you know, our clients will have to train to understand how the new software works, but we don't want. So guess what? We are gonna put it inside and not tell no one. And then, well, a lot of crashes. Why? Because the pilots were doing something and the system were doing the opposite. The more the pilots were wanted to go up, the more the plane would go down, and then it would crash. But that was the beginning of other problems that came in, and basically there were more groundings. Also, the older versions, they started to have problems. Why? Because they started to use external employees or to outsource the tests, the checks and everything. What happened then? No one really had any control on the security or how they were building these planes in the first place. There was a plane that lost his actually open up. There was a door, and then they decided to remove it for some reasons, but the plane was built with the door. So what they did was just take off the door and then put like a panel to make it look like that there was no door in the first place. But the problem is that when they changed the door, they didn't really lock it properly, and so when the plane took off, at some point the panel flowed away, and that was insane, absurd. And then last but not least, Google. I mean, there is definitely more fuck up that happened in 2024. These are the first ones that came to my mind, and then there is Google's. And so apparently judges in the US finally found out that Google is an online search monopoly, and that's a problem now. So how this came to be? Well, that's Google. It has been the main search engine for more than 20 years. So they were the ones that they were doing properly, and they totally built up all the reputation and the branding around the search engine, and it has worked great. But well, things have changed, and in particular with ChatGPT, where someone doesn't even need to search on the internet anymore. You just have to ask a question and he's gonna get an answer. With ChatGPT, and also with I don't know really what happened, but things got worse. Like, the online search engine doesn't really work as it used to. In fact, if you search for something, it's becoming more and more difficult to, I mean, I'm not finding what I'm looking for half of the times. Why judges in the US find it out right now? So the funny part is that if you're a big company in the US and you're a monopoly, that's fine. We don't care. The only problem that we have with is if you're a big company, you're a monopoly, but your product sucks. So that's the problem. We don't care if you are a monopoly. We only care that you provide products that are better, much better than your possible competitors. And the thing is, as I was saying before, now there is ChatGPT, and so the value of a search on the internet is much lower than like 3 years ago. So you would expect, okay, now search engine, online searches have to become much better than AI. But the truth is they haven't. And actually, from my perspective, it feels they got worse. Also from other perspectives that I could find, online, where there were other people saying, yeah, it sucks. I never find what I'm looking for on Google anymore, or it takes much more. And some people were actually saying the reason Google search, online search has become worse is because Google wants you to stay on the page more, to look for pages. And like, that's not a clever idea. Yeah. So in fact, most of the times there are jokes that you can find online. They say, if you ever want to hide a corpse, hide it in the second page of a online search. No one is ever gonna look for the body there. Most of the time I was not looking for what I wanted in the first page, so I would go to the second page, but that's not something that I wanted to. Let's go back. So there is Intel with these damn CPUs which do not work, and they found out, okay, we have been selling the bad CPUs, but we don't want to take any responsibility on it. There is Google, which is like, okay, they've been doing things as a monopoly, but now they're doing things worse, and they're like, okay, you have to keep up, otherwise we are gonna fine you. And in fact they got the fine. CrowdStrike, which is a random company, that is, this one no one knew, but like, apparently is super important, and they were not capable, they couldn't really manage the permissions that they had. 8 billion devices done from one day to another, and then they had to have a manual way to fix them. Then there is Boeing. They don't anymore how to build aircrafts, I would say, or even design them. And so what's the common thing? What's the common theme? I think what is happening with these companies in particular, but I see it with big companies in general, is that they always try to get away with what they do. So they have their boundaries. You're a small company at the beginning, you go get medium, you try to give the best product ever, you create your branding, your brand, people love it, and then you start moving your limits. You're like, okay, let me see what I can get away with for people to pay me. And then you move this thing, then you move this thing, then you move this thing, and at some point you're like, yeah, my search engine is actually crap, but people have always been using it, so they're not changing it. Or maybe Intel, I always actually try to blame my partners or other people for for the issues of my CPUs, but I always got away with it, and now it's awkward that everyone knows that no, that's not your partners, that's definitely your CPUs. This is gonna be definitely a very bad thing for the brand. And then there is this guy, which is like, oh yeah, I want more permissions. Give me more permissions. Nothing has ever happened. Yeah, let's release all our code in one go. Let's see what happens to all the devices I have, or I can upload stuff to. without any tests, preliminary tests. Or this guy, let's try to save money on bolts, let's try to save money on designing aircrafts. Let's not solve this problem with, you know, hardware stuff. Let's solve it with some software fix. And you know what, let's not even say to the pilots that they're using that there is this safety mechanism. And so by the end of the day, that's how I think what happened is that these big companies, they just kept doing what they've been doing for the past years, and now it has become really hilariously dumb. Like, it's clear that they're doing things wrong. They're trying to just save themselves or save their faces with some PRs, with some very carefully written statements. But yeah, it's clear. And so that's what I wanted to talk about here. I know it took a bit some time, but yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and maybe you didn't know the details of these things, but yeah, if you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, and hopefully see you soon. Bye.